Title: How to Never Get Angry and Not Be Bothered by Anyone. Mufti Menk. Intro. My beloved brothers and sisters, anger is one of the fastest ways to lose your peace. A few words from someone, a small situation, a moment of disrespect, and suddenly your heart is disturbed, your mind is restless, and your calm disappears. Yet the Prophet ﷺ taught us that true strength is not in overpowering others, but in controlling ourselves when anger rises. Life will always test you with people who trigger your emotions, but your power is in deciding what you allow to disturb your heart. When you learn to pause, to remember Allah, and to respond with wisdom instead of emotion, you protect your soul from unnecessary battles and your life from unnecessary stress. This message will help you understand how to calm your heart, master your reactions, and walk through life with dignity, patience, and inner peace. No matter what people do, anger begins. When the ego takes control, anger does not appear suddenly in the heart without a cause. It grows the moment the ego begins to take control of your inner world. The ego is that voice inside you that demands recognition, respect, validation, and dominance. When that voice feels threatened by criticism, disrespect, misunderstanding, or even a simple difference of opinion, anger rushes forward as its defense. At that moment, your peace is no longer being guided by faith or wisdom, but by wounded pride. The ego tells you that you must respond, that you must prove something, that you must protect your image. And in listening to that voice, you unknowingly hand your emotional control to the very thing that weakens you. The Prophet ﷺ warned us about this hidden danger of the ego, because he knew that anger is rarely about the situation itself, but about how the ego interprets that situation. When the ego is strong, even small matters feel personal, and even gentle words feel like attacks. The heart becomes restless because it is trying to defend something fragile, the image of the self, instead of standing firm on the strength of faith. When the ego dominates, every interaction becomes a battlefield. A look can offend you, a comment can disturb you, silence can provoke you. You begin measuring your worth by how others treat you. And the moment their behavior does not match your expectations, anger rises. This is not strength, it is emotional dependence. The ego feeds on comparison, control, and approval. And when any of these are threatened, it demands a reaction. Anger becomes its weapon. The heart tightens, the mind races, and your peace disappears. Yet nothing outside you has truly changed, only your inner alignment has shifted. You are no longer anchored in Allah's guidance, but in your own pride. And pride is heavy. It exhausts the soul because it is always guarding, always competing, always proving. The heart was never created to live this way. Islam calls you away from this exhausting struggle by teaching you humility, patience, and self-mastery. Anger continues to grow when the ego convinces you that you are always right and others are always wrong. It refuses to listen. It refuses to soften. It refuses to step back. It wants to dominate the moment instead of understanding it. This is why anger often leaves regret behind, because it is not born from wisdom, but from wounded identity. When you are guided by ego, you do not ask, what is the best response? You ask, how do I protect my pride? And in that question lies the seed of destruction. Relationships suffer, hearts become distant, trust is damaged, and your own soul carries the weight of words spoken in heat that cannot be taken back. Allah did not create you to be ruled by your impulses. He created you to rise above them. The ego also turns anger into a habit. Each time you allow it to control your response, you strengthen its influence. Your heart becomes more sensitive, more reactive, and more easily disturbed. Over time, peace feels unfamiliar and conflict feels normal. This is a dangerous path because it makes the soul restless even when life is calm. The Prophet ﷺ described the truly strong person not as the one who defeats others, but as the one who defeats himself, meaning the one who controls the ego when anger rises. The self-control is not weakness, it is the highest form of inner strength. It requires awareness, discipline, and deep trust in Allah. When the ego is quiet, anger loses its power. You begin to see situations for what they are instead of what they threaten. You no longer feel the need to react immediately. You pause, you breathe, you remember Allah. That pause is where freedom lives. In that space, the heart regains its balance and the mind regains its clarity. You realize that not everything requires a response and not every word deserves your energy. This understanding protects your peace and your dignity at the same time. Anger thrives on the illusion of control. The ego wants to control people, outcomes, and respect, but control belongs only to Allah. When you surrender this illusion, your heart becomes lighter. You stop demanding that life obey your expectations. You stop feeling personally attacked by every inconvenience. You stop allowing your emotional state to be dictated by the behavior of others. This is when true calm begins to settle into your life. As your awareness grows, you start noticing how often anger is simply fear wearing a different face, fear of being ignored, fear of being disrespected, fear of losing your position, fear of being wrong. When the ego feels unsafe, it raises its voice. But faith teaches the heart that it is already safe with Allah. When you know that your worth is written by your Creator, no comment can destroy you and no moment can diminish you. The heart becomes steady because its value is no longer being negotiated in every conversation. Over time, controlling the ego transforms your entire life. You become slower to judge, quicker to forgive, and calmer under pressure. You do not carry the emotional storms of others inside your chest. You choose peace not because life is easy, but because your heart is disciplined. That discipline becomes your shield. It protects you from unnecessary battles, wasted energy, and emotional exhaustion. When the ego loses its grip, anger fades into wisdom. You respond instead of reacting. You speak when it is beneficial and remain silent when it is better. You protect your heart without closing it. You walk through life with a steady calm that others notice but cannot easily disturb. And this is the secret the Prophet ﷺ taught us. The greatest victory is not over others, but over the self. When you master your ego, you master your anger. When you master your anger, you protect your peace. And when your peace is protected, your life becomes lighter, clearer, and infinitely stronger. The strongest believer is the one who controls his reaction. The strongest believer is not the one who raises his voice the loudest, wins every argument, or proves his point in every conflict, but the one who masters his own reactions when life tests him. Control of reaction is the truest measure of inner power because it requires discipline over the self, not dominance over others. Every day, situations arise that challenge your patience, harsh words, unfair treatment, misunderstandings, disappointments, and silent provocations. Anyone can react, few can restrain themselves. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that real strength is found in this restraint, because a person who can govern his reactions governs the direction of his life. When you control your reaction, you refuse to let chaos outside of you create chaos within you. You decide what enters your heart and what leaves it untouched. That choice transforms your emotional world from a battlefield into a place of calm and dignity. When a believer learns to control his reaction, he stops handing over his peace to circumstances he cannot control. He no longer allows another person's behavior to determine his emotional state. Whether someone praises him or insults him, includes him or ignores him, agrees with him or opposes him, his heart remains steady. This steadiness is not coldness, it is maturity of faith. It comes from knowing that Allah is watching every word spoken and every intention carried. A heart that is conscious of Allah does not rush into reaction because it is anchored in something far greater than the moment. Reactions often come from the ego's need to defend itself. When you feel attacked, disrespected, or misunderstood, the ego demands an immediate response. But faith teaches the believer to pause before responding. In that pause, the believer remembers Allah, weighs the consequences, and chooses the path of wisdom. This pause is the difference between regret and peace. Many wounds in life are not caused by events themselves, but by how we responded to them. The believer who controls his reaction protects himself from unnecessary harm, broken relationships, and emotional exhaustion. Control of reaction also builds emotional intelligence. You begin to recognize your triggers and understand your patterns. You notice which situations provoke you and which thoughts fuel your anger. This awareness allows you to interrupt destructive cycles before they grow. Instead of being ruled by impulse, you become guided by intention. Instead of acting from pain, you act from purpose. This transformation reshapes your character, making you calmer, wiser, and more balanced. The believer who controls his reaction also protects his dignity. He does not lower himself to every argument. He does not chase every provocation. He does not feel the need to prove himself in every moment. He knows that dignity is preserved by restraint, not by retaliation. When others lose their composure, he keeps his. When others speak carelessly, he chooses his words with care. This composure earns respect even from those who oppose him, because true authority is recognized in self-mastery. Reaction control strengthens relationships. Many conflicts escalate not because of what happened, but because of how it was handled. When you choose calm over confrontation, understanding over accusation, and patience over pride, you create space for healing instead of division. You become a source of stability in your family, among your friends, and in your community. People feel safer around you because they know your heart is governed by wisdom. A believer who controls his reaction also experiences greater inner peace. His mind is not constantly racing with regret over what he said or guilt over how he acted. His heart is not burdened by unnecessary grudges or lingering anger. He sleeps better, thinks clearer, and lives lighter. Emotional peace becomes a natural state, not a rare moment. Controlling reaction is also an act of worship. Every time you restrain your anger for the sake of Allah, every time you choose patience instead of pride, every time you remain silent instead of hurtful, you are rewarded. Allah sees the struggle inside your heart, the battle between impulse and faith, and He honors your effort. Over time, this discipline strengthens your iman and refines your soul. As this control grows, your entire life changes. You face challenges with calm confidence. You handle stress with steady patience. You navigate difficult people with wisdom and restraint. You no longer fear conflict because you trust your ability to remain grounded. The world may shake, but your heart does not. And this is the reality of strength in Islam. The one who controls his reaction controls his destiny. He chooses peace over chaos, wisdom over impulse, and faith over ego. In doing so, he becomes a believer whose presence brings calm, whose character inspires respect, and whose life reflects the true power of self-mastery. Silence is better than a regretful response. Silence is one of the most powerful forms of wisdom a believer can develop, because it protects the heart from wounds that words can never heal. Many of the deepest regrets in life are not born from what happened to us, but from what we said in moments when emotion overtook wisdom. Anger, hurt, pride, and fear rush through the heart, and the tongue becomes their messenger. In those moments, silence is not weakness, it is protection. It protects your dignity, your relationships, and your peace. The Prophet ﷺ taught that whoever believes in Allah and the last day should speak good or remain silent, because once words leave the mouth, they can never return. Silence gives the heart time to settle, the mind time to think, and the soul time to remember Allah. Without that pause, a single sentence can destroy years of trust, break bonds that took a lifetime to build, and leave scars that apology cannot erase. When you choose silence over reaction, you save yourself from becoming a prisoner of your own emotions. A regretful response is one that satisfies the ego for a moment but punishes the heart for years. How many people live with the weight of words they wish they could take back? How many nights are spent replaying conversations that should have never happened? Silence ends that cycle. It allows the storm inside you to pass before you speak. You stop responding from pain and start responding from purpose. That shift alone transforms your life. You begin to feel stronger, calmer, and more in control of yourself. You realize that not every situation deserves your voice. Not every insult requires your defense. And not every misunderstanding needs an argument. Silence also reveals true power. Anyone can shout, anyone can argue, anyone can react. Very few can remain calm when their emotions are triggered. The one who remains silent in the face of provocation is not losing, he is mastering himself. He is refusing to give his peace to the chaos of the moment. He is choosing dignity over dominance, wisdom over impulse, and faith over ego. This kind of strength is rare, and when people encounter it, they feel it immediately. Your silence becomes louder than any argument. Your composure becomes your statement. Your calm becomes your authority. There is a spiritual dimension to silence that many people overlook. When you restrain your tongue for the sake of Allah, you are engaging in a form of worship. You are protecting your heart from sin, your record from regret, and your soul from unnecessary burden. Allah loves the servant who controls himself when anger rises, and the reward for that control is greater than any victory in argument. Silence invites Allah's help into the situation. Where words often escalate, silence allows divine wisdom to intervene. Situations resolve themselves, hearts soften, storms settle. But when you respond recklessly, you close the door to that mercy. Silence also protects relationships. Most relationships do not break because of major events. They break because of accumulated small wounds caused by careless words. A harsh sentence spoken in anger can linger in the heart for years. Silence prevents those wounds. It allows space for healing, understanding, and reconciliation. It teaches the heart to prioritize connection over control. When you choose silence, you are choosing the long-term health of your relationships over the short-term satisfaction of your ego. The more you practice silence, the more emotionally mature you become. You begin to recognize your triggers and anticipate your reactions. You learn when to step away, when to pause, and when to speak later with clarity and kindness. This emotional intelligence strengthens your character and stabilizes your life. You stop being controlled by every emotional wave. You become the one steering the ship. Silence also brings inner peace. When you are not constantly entangled in arguments, confrontations, and emotional battles, your heart becomes lighter. Your mind becomes quieter. Your life becomes simpler. You no longer carry the heavy burden of regret for things said in moments of weakness. You walk through life with fewer scars and fewer conflicts because you have learned the value of restraint. There is also deep self-respect in silence. You do not need to explain yourself to everyone. You do not need to prove your worth in every situation. You know who you are, and Allah knows your intentions. That is enough. Silence becomes a shield that guards your dignity and your peace. As this habit grows, your entire life changes. Your reactions soften. Your relationships improve. Your heart becomes steadier. You feel closer to Allah because you are living by the wisdom He loves. You begin to experience a level of calm that others chase their entire lives. And one day you realize that choosing silence over a regretful response was one of the most powerful decisions you ever made, because it saved your heart, protected your future, and gave you a peace that no argument could ever provide. Remembering Allah calms the storm inside. Remembering Allah is not just an act of worship, it is the medicine of the heart. When life becomes overwhelming, when thoughts race, when emotions surge, and when the soul feels heavy, it is because the heart has drifted from its natural anchor. Allah created the heart to find peace in His remembrance, and without it, the heart becomes restless, unsettled, and easily disturbed. Every storm inside you, anger, fear, anxiety, sadness, confusion, is calmed when you return to the one who controls the wind and the waves. Dhikr is not merely words on the tongue. It is a return of the heart to its source of safety. The moment you whisper Allah's name, something begins to shift within you. The chaos does not disappear instantly, but it loses its grip. The heart starts to breathe again. The mind slows. The soul feels held. This is the mercy of remembrance. The world creates storms in the heart because the world is unstable by nature. People change, situations collapse, plans fail, loss visits, fear whispers. When the heart is tied only to these things, it becomes fragile. But when the heart is tied to Allah, it becomes resilient. You begin to carry your burdens differently. You stop fighting every wave and learn to float upon trust with every remembrance of Allah. Your worries shrink, not because they vanish, but because your heart grows larger than them. The believer who remembers Allah regularly does not live without problems, but he lives with perspective. He understands that no matter how intense the storm becomes, Allah is greater than it. Remembering Allah transforms how you experience anger. Instead of allowing anger to consume you, you pause and return your heart to Allah. You remind yourself of His patience, His mercy, and His control. That remembrance places your emotions back into their proper scale. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. The fire inside cools. The urge to react weakens. The need to dominate the moment fades. You respond with wisdom instead of impulse. This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional mastery, rooted in faith. Dhikr also softens the heart against sadness. When sorrow weighs on the chest, the soul feels isolated and unseen. But the moment you remember Allah, you realize you are not alone. You are being heard. You are being seen. Your tears are counted. Your pain is understood. This awareness brings comfort that no human reassurance can match. The heart becomes lighter because it is no longer carrying its burden in isolation. As remembrance becomes part of your daily life, your emotional stability deepens. You begin to notice that your reactions slow, your worries soften, and your fears lose their intensity. You no longer panic at every difficulty. You no longer collapse at every disappointment. You move through challenges with calm because your heart has learned where safety truly lives. The more you remember Allah, the less power the world has over you. Criticism hurts less, loss wounds less, uncertainty frightens less. You become anchored. You remain steady while life changes around you. This steadiness is not emotional numbness, it is spiritual strength. Remembrance also refines your thoughts. Your mind becomes clearer. Your perspective becomes wiser. You stop overthinking because your heart trusts more. You stop chasing control because you surrender more. This surrender brings profound peace. Your connection with Allah grows deeper. Your trust strengthens. Your patience expands. Your hope renews. The storms inside you no longer rule your life. Eventually, remembering Allah becomes your refuge. When life hurts, you return. When you feel lost, you return. When you are overwhelmed, you return. And each time you return, the storm weakens and your peace grows. This is the secret. The heart that remembers Allah cannot remain in chaos. Because in His remembrance, the storm always finds its calm. Choose peace over proving a point. Choosing peace over proving a point is one of the greatest acts of emotional and spiritual intelligence a believer can develop. The human ego is deeply attached to being right. It craves validation, recognition, and the satisfaction of winning an argument. But the heart was not created for constant battle. When you choose to prove a point, you may satisfy the ego for a moment, but you often sacrifice your peace for much longer. Words spoken in the heat of pride leave scars in the heart that no victory in argument can heal. The Prophet ﷺ taught that the one who abandons argument even when he is right is promised a house in Jannah, because Allah values the protection of the heart far more than the satisfaction of the ego. When you choose peace, you are not losing. You are rising above a battlefield that was never meant for your soul. Most conflicts in life are not about truth, they are about power. They are about whose voice is louder, whose pride is stronger, and whose ego refuses to bend. But the believer who understands the value of peace steps away from the struggle. He recognizes that not every misunderstanding requires correction, and not every disagreement requires victory.